So monkeyman stars and is directed by Dev Patel, which is a feat in of itself that this was the first movie this guy's directed, because my God. And immediately, the thing about this movie that shocked me, like a lot of movies this year, is I didn't know anything about it besides that it looked kind of corny. I saw a couple scenes with a guy with a monkey mask on, and it just didn't seem like it was going to be my thing at all. And in this movie, Dev Patel plays this like down on his luck, broken guy. You know, he resorts to fighting in fight clubs. He resorts to crime. His life's obviously not going the way he wants. And when he does fight in these underground fights, he wears this monkey mask, which is supposed to be an embodiment of a Hindu spirit. And because of these terrible things that he has to experience when he's a kid, he chooses to take on the persona of the monkey, kind of, you know, to fight for himself and for the people he feels are disenfranchised. Because fairly early on in this movie, they choose to let you know that like when he was younger, his mother was killed kind of by this extremist government group. They're kind of anti-minority, sort of comparable to fascist party. Because of this, you're kind of left with this broken man who ever since his childhood, he's always had thoughts of this. He feels like his life has kind of been derailed and he's always been missing something. And through the persona of the monkey, he feels like he can fight for what he truly believes in. Now, starting off immediately, the first thing you're going to notice with this movie is it is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm not talking like it's a normal watchable movie. I'm talking like Oppenheimer shit. The visuals and the sounds in this movie are absolutely next level. I was completely immersed in this movie from the beginning. I think the way it looks, the way it's filmed is absolutely awesome. Because in this movie, you have this really Bollywood look where you have this like greasy ran down town. You have like everyone sweating profusely. It's hot. It's really like dark. You can't see a lot in some scenes. And I would honestly say that like the visuals in this movie are so good. You could pretty much watch this movie on mute and enjoy it, because the visuals and the sound effects they have going are so good. You have this super unique film style where whenever you're fighting, you're like right up in it. It's almost like you're like 2 feet away from the action. You also just have all these like overhead drone shots, these super cool shots of the city. They do a really good job of contrasting like the grimy areas with really sharp pictures. And I also think this movie does a really good job at sound selection, in which they use like sound cues and, you know, like sound effects for the fight scenes. I feel like they really click. Because it feels like there was a big emphasis in this movie on like bones crunching, you know, things snapping, sharp glass breaking. It's all very much contrast, kind of like the soft nature of the movie. And I also thought this movie is really creative in the way it kind of blends a backstory of the character and kind of introduces you to who he is, so that you feel for him, you sympathize for his actions, because if not, you would just think he's kind of a dick and he's like over the top violent. But the way they choose to kind of go about the backstories of showing you pages of the monkey legend, you know, they do flashbacks at home when it's him and his mom as a kid. And when they do introduce you to the backstory of like what happened in his town to his mom and like how corrupt the government is, you really feel for the guy and you really just believe that, you know, he's doing what he believes he needs to do. And when we get into the acting of this movie, obviously Dev Patel as a lead is absolutely great. I mean, he's a legend for this performance. I'm not too familiar with anything else besides Slumdog Millionaire. And I'm not sure if this is going to be a Bollywood movie, a Hollywood movie, whatever this is classified as. But if it chooses to go the Oscar route, we'll see you at the Oscars, buddy. Because my God, does this guy do an amazing job the entire movie. I mean, he doesn't have that many lines in which he's supposed to like sway you or anything, but with the dialogue he does have, with the flashbacks and his facial expressions, this guy's able to portray like a ton of emotional ranges, because he's asked to play like this broken guy who's also incredibly angry. He laughs in some scenes, he's sad in other scenes where he has to cry. His range is all over the place, and I think he pretty much hits all of it. And as I said earlier, he's supposed to be this like broken guy, and like somehow he's able to portray that, where the whole time I was completely empathetic to his character. Even when he's doing heinous things, I never really thought he was a bad guy. I thought it was something that he thought he had to do, and I kind of sympathize with him. And something else they choose to do that's really smart and to maintain his dignity and his pride and his courage and all these other values the monkey's going for is that his character never really wavers in times of crisis. He'll be in these scenes where it's a severe car chase, he's in like a fist fight to the death, and if he sees someone who he doesn't feel like deserves to have bad things happen to them, he feels like he needs to look out for them. Because there's like a scene in this movie, he's in like a car chase and he could get away from the cops, but he chooses not to run over a little girl and he crashes because of it. Or another scene where he's in this like bloody conflict and he sees this girl hiding under the bed who's trying to escape the attacker, and he kind of like frees her before dealing with the attacker. I don't know, to me, I just thought it was like really cool how they make you think this guy's like a good guy. I really felt connected to this guy. But obviously the main sell to this movie is going to be that it's supposed to be like an action movie, like a take on The Raid, but more of like an Indian take. And when you do get into it, holy shit, is this movie badass when it gets to the action. I was a pretty big fan of The Beekeeper earlier this year, but this movie might have made me forget The Beekeeper. I like the action in this movie so much. All of the action is choreographed in a way where it feels like the camera's like 2 feet behind the fight. So it literally feels like you're almost like dirty boxing with both of the guys that are fighting. And something I was really a fan of in this movie is that they choose to make this guy completely ruthless, in that, you know, like he feels like he's vindicated in doing anything he has to do. Because the shit they have this guy doing is absolutely savage. I mean, this guy goes Mike Tyson, he's biting people. You have people grabbing coffee pots and throwing hot boiling water on people. You have people throwing people's heads through microwaves. And when and if you see this movie, there's a scene involving an elevator in this movie that you'll know what I'm talking about. Holy shit, is it awesome. And something else about the visuals of this movie is the choreography of this movie is absolutely beautiful. I mean, you can tell they rehearsed these fights. It is absolutely ebb and flow. I mean, I don't know. I just loved how self-aware this movie is about what it's going for. They even reference John Wick in the movie when he's buying a gun. And this movie also has an all-time montage scene, in my opinion. We all love Rocky montages, obviously. But you have this guy who plays like the Bollywood drums, and he's kind of doing like a 1-2 pattern, and he kind of teaches the guy to box to the Bollywood drum pattern. And I thought it was one of the coolest scenes in this movie. But what I really think is going to make this movie stand out, at least it did to me, is I think this movie has a lot of heart. And, you know, with a movie like this that's supposed to be over-the-top violent, I think it's easy to get lost in just violence itself. But I really like the way they kind of portrayed him as the monkey man, the savior, you know, the fighter for the disenfranchised. I really thought that the movie has heart and it really has purpose in what it's trying to portray about him and his family. And that's what I think is going to set this movie aside from a lot of other forgettable action movies in which you have like an action hero who's fighting his way out of 30 people. I think you're going to remember this character, and I think it's going to be memorable because of that. Yeah, this movie's absolutely beautiful to look at. The sound effects are great. The music's great. Somehow they blend like Bollywood drums with Rick Ross and Screamo music. The acting is amazing. Dev Patel steals the show. I mean, this guy should be up for an Oscar for this performance. I loved it. You get invested in the characters. This movie pulls at your heartstrings. It really hit me emotionally. I thought this movie had a really touching story. And I don't know, I mean, in the end, I gotta say, Monkey Man is just fucking awesome. So have you seen this movie yet? If you have, comment down below. Let me know. Let me know if you loved it as much as I did. If not, go see it, please. But if you haven't yet, let me know what your favorite action movie is. Maybe a foreign action flick, something similar to The Raid. But aside from that, obviously, I'm just gonna post a link to my other 2024 reviews up here if you want to watch any of those. Yeah, that's all I got to say about this one. I loved it. Awesome experience. As always, take care, guys.